This video is for people who are looking to upgrade their setup with the motivation to have the best OSU gaming experience that they can afford within their budget. We will be diving into what computer parts deliver the lowest input lag. And one last thing before we begin, we will be going over a method to measure overall system latency for your PC near the end of the video, so be sure to watch until the very end. And with that, let's get into the main sauce. So you thought we were going to go to the usual setup. Well, it's going to be a little different this time. This video is less of a tutorial and more of an advice video. So we won't really be needing to see what's on my monitor until we talk about RAM, which is going to be the third thing that we talk about. The first thing that we'll be talking about is what CPU you should go with. Now, there are two big players, or really the only players in the CPU market right now, and that is AMD versus Intel. Supply issues aside, we're going to assume that you can buy the newest CPU on the market right now. Right now, as of February 2021, the king of gaming is AMD. So you would think that AMD being able to push higher frame rates would be the better option to go with, because of course the higher the frame rate, the lower the input lag, right? Well, there's just one small issue with Team Red right now, and that is their chipset layout. On the screen right now is the chipset layout of the AMD RYZEN CPU. And as you can see, there are multiple different sections on the CPU die itself. You see, these different sections have to communicate with each other somehow. And the way they communicate with each other is through this thing called the Infinity Fabric. If we look over at Intel's die, we can see that it's just one section. So with Team Blue, there's no need to have something like the Infinity Fabric to have different parts of that section communicate with each other. Do you see what I'm trying to get at here? This Infinity Fabric that Team Red has is a source of input lag or latency. It takes just a little bit more time for signals to go from one part of the die to the other on AMD's design, whereas with Intel's, there is no in-between messenger. And as you can see via this IDA64 memory latency test, Intel has just shy of half the latency that Ryzen does. And while it is comparing Zen 2 versus Intel while Zen 3 is out, unfortunately Zen 3 is not able to match or surpass the levels of latency that Intel is able to achieve. If you're wondering where I got this bar chart from, I got it from a forum post on blurbusters.com. If you want to go through that forum post and read through it all, the link will be in the description. So this is kind of awkward since I am an early adopter of Ryzen. I have a 1700X in my system, but here I am recommending Intel if you want the best latency. But that's just a simple fact as of right now. So as amazing Ryzen is and how it disrupted the market and made higher performance more affordable in terms of latency, Intel wins. Now for the second PC part we are going to discuss, this will be short but I have to bring it up, SSDs. Now of course everyone knows that SSDs are better than hard drives. The thing you need to look out for when you're looking to switch over to or upgrade to another SSD is whether that SSD has DRAM or not. Now the important question is, will having DRAM actually affect your OSU experience? And the answer is yes, actually. It is. It is known that having DRAM in an SSD can improve performance in just about any game. So yes, be careful to look for SSDs that have DRAM, especially if you're trying to go cheap. And now for the third PC part we're going to cover, DDR4 RAM. These days you can get a pretty decent kit of RAM for $60 to $80. Of course it won't have RGB or anything flashy really, but you'll be able to get at least 3000 megahertz at CL16. CL stands for cast latency, and it is a form of latency. The RAM speed also helps determine the latency. Now I'll have this website linked down in the description. Basically, this is a RAM latency calculator. It takes the RAM speed and the cast latency and runs those values through a formula that results in the overall latency for that configuration. So if I put down 3200 megahertz with CL15, we get 9.375 nanoseconds. If we bring up the cast latency to 16, which is way more common than cast latency 15, we get 10 nanoseconds. If we bring up the megahertz to 3600, then we get 8.88888888. You get the idea. So you basically want a balance between the RAM speed and the cast latency. It is very easy to overlook cast latency, and that's mainly because the main advertising point of most of the RAM out there is its speed, its megahertz, but cast latency matters just as much. So if you are in the market for buying a new set of RAM, I do have some affiliate links down in the description below. It would mean a lot to me if you use those affiliate links. Now, the fourth thing we're going to talk about is graphics cards, GPUs. We have two main players in the market right now, Nvidia and AMD. Which brand has the lower latency? Well, as we saw with Intel and AMD, Intel had the lower latency. But as it turns out, Nvidia and AMD actually trade blows. Now, this is not taking Nvidia's ultra-low latency mode or reflex technology into account, along with AMD's anti-lag feature. If you just run them stock, they trade blows. So really, you could go on either side with this one. In my case, I prefer to go with Nvidia. And once again, if you are currently in the market for any of the PC parts that we talked about in this video so far, I do have affiliate links down in the description below. It would help me a ton if you use those. Now, just as promised, we are finally at the part of this video where we will be measuring our overall system latency. If you have gone through all the videos in the guide up here, then you will already have this program installed, but I'm just going to go through this again just in case you haven't already installed this program. Now, if you do want to go through the guide in that time card, I highly recommend going through and downloading this program first and running a test before you go through any of those tweaks and optimizations we made in those videos. What I'm going to need you to do is go down into the description and click on the link labeled LatencyMon, and you will be brought to this page. Go ahead and scroll down and click on LatencyMon, and it should download a .exe. Go ahead and run that .exe and let it download to wherever it needs to download. Next, go ahead and traverse over to wherever the program installed and right click on the .exe file and run as administrator. Something like this should pop up for you. What we are going to do first is go over to Tools and Options, go over to the CPU tab, and make sure that all of your CPU cores and threads are checked off. Click Apply and OK. Next, I will need you to close all other programs, including the ones running in the background, and now we can press the Start Monitor button. The window should now look like this, and a good rule of thumb is to leave this running for about 2 minutes. Now, of course, I'm not going to run for the full 2 minutes. I'm just doing this for demonstrative purposes. So once your 2 minutes is up, go over to the Stats tab, and you will have to scroll down a little bit, and eventually you will find these stats right here. Highest measured interrupt to process latency, average measured interrupt to process latency, highest measured interrupt to DPC latency, average measured interrupt to DPC latency. These four values are what you need to look at here. So if this is the first time you've run this test, go ahead and take a screenshot or copy and paste these results anywhere you'd like. Make sure it's saved somewhere on your system. And now I would like you to go through all 3 previous videos in the playlist down in the description or in that time card or in the pinned comment and make those tweaks and optimizations to your PC. Moving forward, I am assuming that you have gone through those videos and tweaked and optimized your PC. So what we are going to do is rerun the test for 2 minutes. Of course, making sure that all other programs are closed, including the ones running in the background. Then once our 2 minutes is up, you can click on stop and move over to our stats tab where we will scroll down and look to see if there was any improvement in our values over here. What we want is these values to go down in value. Feel free to let me know your results down in the comment section below. I really do want to see how I was able to help you reduce your overall system latency. And if by chance you're not satisfied with your results, feel free to check out Preethi's channel as he goes much more in depth on what you can do to get better results. This video marked the beginning of the hardware phase of the input lag, latency, and performance optimization guide for OSU. If you have any questions or suggestions to make, feel free to leave them down in the comments down below or pay a visit over at my Twitch where I stream on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The next video on this topic will be covering what to look for in a keyboard or keypad for OSU, so be sure to get subscribed and stay notified for that video. And with that, hopefully I will see you in the next one. Happy clicking!